Hello everybody, my name is Mario5514 and welcome back to another Splatoon Talk video. In this video we're going to be looking at some what-if patch notes for Splatoon 3 for patch 11.1. After the drop of 11.0, the devs confirmed that another update was coming soon and it would come out sooner than expected. With this, I'm only going to show one video relating to 11.1, given that I don't know how long it will take before the update actually drops, so this is probably only going to be the only one talking about it. But if you end up liking the video, consider subscribing, and let's get started. And keep in mind, these changes that you're about to see will be for most of the weapons they will get some of the changes to match their original specifications from their time in Splatoon 1. So keep that in mind. Anyway, with that aside, let's get started. So first up is Splatter Shot, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 3%, going from 0.92 to 0.9%. Its shot variance while jumping will be decreased by about 18%. Its shot variance on the ground, where its ground RNG, will be reduced by 12%. Its droplet rate will be increased from 1.5 to 2. The distance between the droplets will go from 9.2 units to 8.5. And the radius of ink droplets far from the player, or far ink droplets, will be increased by about 3%, from 1.71 units to 1.8 units. Up next is the Splatter Shot Pro, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 5%, going from 2% to 1.9. Its shot variance on the ground, or its ground RNG, will be reduced by roughly 20%. Its droplet rate will go from 2 to 3. The radius of ink droplets far from the player, or far ink droplets, will be increased by about 4%. The speed of shots will be increased by approximately 7%, and its effective range, or its firing range, will be extended by roughly 10% for Pro. Up next is the NZAP for the 85 and 89 model. For both weapons, its shot variance while jumping, or its jump RNG, will be reduced by about 17%. Its ground RNG will be reduced by about 16%. Its droplet rate will go from 1.4 to 1.6, being a huge increase for it. The radius of far ink droplets will be increased by about 3%, same as Splatter Shot, from 1.71 units to 1.8 units. The speed of the shots will be increased by approximately 4%. And its effective range will be increased by about 3%. Up next is the 52 gal, where its ink consumption will be increased by roughly 9%, going from 1.5 to 1.6%, given that it's one of the major complaints people have against it. Its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by about 8%, from 12 degrees down to 11. The chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle per shot will be decreased from 3% to 2%. With this change, the number of bullets to reach minimum accuracy will go from 8 to 12. Its droplet rate will be increased from 2.4 to 3. The distance between droplets will go from 5.5 units to 5 units, and the radius of standard ink droplets will be decreased by about 9% for 52. Up next is the 96 gal. Well, for all three weapons, its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by about 12%. Its droplet rate will be increased from 3.4 to 4. The chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle per shot will be decreased from 3% to 2%, and the maximum chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle will be decreased from 30% to 25%. With those changes, the number of bullets to reach minimum accuracy will go from 9 to 12. The speed of the shots will be increased by approximately 13%, and its firing range, or its effective range, will be extended by about 4%, which for 96 would be a very good change. Up next is the Jet Squelcher, where for all three weapons, its shot variance on the ground, or its ground RNG, will be reduced by roughly 20%. Its droplet rate will be increased from 2.4 to 3. The distance between droplets will be decreased from 10 units to 9.5 units. The chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle per shot will be decreased from 1.5% to 1%. With this change, the number of bullets to reach minimum accuracy will go from 16 to 20. And the speed of the shots will be increased by approximately 3% and will extend the flight distance. So basically, Jet Squelcher will have 3% longer range with 3% faster shot speed. Next up is the L3 Nozzle Nose. For all three weapons, its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 9%. Its shot variance while jumping will be decreased from 6 degrees down to 1 degree, matching that of H3. The time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be decreased from between 25 to 70 frames to 0 to 60. The distance between droplets will go from 12 units to 11.6 units, which is a nice change there. Its damage to the Rainmaker shield will be increased by about 5. And the radius of ink droplets close and far from the player, basically the near and far ink droplets, will be increased from 1.7765 units to 2.3 units, which is a huge change for L3. Up next is the H3 nozzle nose. For all three weapons, its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 23%. Its droplet rate will be increased from 3 to 4. The weapon will deal 4% more damage to the Rainmaker shield. The speed of the shots will be increased by approximately 8%, and its effective range will be extended by roughly 10%. On top of that, its movement speed when firing will be increased by 20%. Up next is Squeezer. For both weapons, its damage when pressing ZR will be increased from 38 to 40. Its droplet rate while pressing and holding ZR will be increased from 1.5 to 2. The distance between droplets while holding ZR will be decreased from 8.67 units to 7.5 units. And the speed of the shots while holding ZR will be increased by approximately 14%. And its effective range while holding ZR will be increased by roughly 4%. However, to compensate for this change, its shot variance while on the ground holding ZR will be decreased by roughly 25%, which I think for Squeezer would be a very strong change. Up next is the Sploosh-O-Matic, where its damage will be increased from 38 to 40, its shot variance while jumping will be decreased by about 8%, and its shot variance on the ground will be reduced by roughly 6%. Its droplet rate will be increased from 1.4 to 1.5. The radius of firing droplets will be increased by about 5%, going from 1.82 units to 1.9 units. And the time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be decreased from 25 to 70 frames to 0 to 60, matching that of what we gave L3. Next up is the Splash-O-Matic, where the distance between droplets will be reduced from 9.5 units to 9 units. The time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be reduced from 25 to 70 frames to 0 to 60. Given the fact that Splash does not have any jump RNG, this is just a random change here to, something for Splash to work with in case you do see the reticle expand or something. The radius of ink droplets far from the player will be increased by about 3%, from 1.77 units to 1.8 units. Its droplet rate will be increased from 1.5 to 1.6. However, the weapon will take 10 frames longer to recover its ink, where its ink recovery delay will be 10 frames longer. And the time it takes for the bullets to reach minimum damage will be extended from 20 frames to 28 frames, which I think would be a very nice change. Up next is the Aerospray. For all three weapons, its damage will go from 24 to 24.5. The minimum chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle will be decreased from 6% to 5%, and the maximum chance will go from 50 to 40%. Its shot variance while jumping will be decreased by about 3%, and its shot variance on the ground will be reduced by about 5%, which I think for Aerospray would be a nice change. Up next is the Splattershot Jr., where its ink consumption was increased by about 16%, from 0.43 to 0.5%. The distance between droplets will be reduced from 9.5 units to 9 units, and the radius of firing droplets will be increased from 1.77 units to 1.85 units. However, the radius of standard ink droplets will be reduced by about 8%, and its droplet rate will be increased from 1.4 to 1.5. And similar to the buff we gave L3 and Sploosh, the time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be decreased from 25 to 70 frames to 0 to 60 frames. And last up on the shooters is the Splattershot Nova, where its overall damage will be increased from 24 to 26. The minimum chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle will be decreased from 10% to 4%. The chance the bullets have to deviate per shot will go from 3% to 2%. With these changes, the number of bullets to reach minimum accuracy will go from 5 to 12. Its shot variance while on the ground will be reduced by roughly 22%. Its droplet rate will be increased from 1.4 to 1.6, and the radius of firing droplets will be increased from 2.04 units to 2.3 units. Onto the rollers. First up, a Splat Roller, where the amount of ink consumed will be increased by roughly 5%. Its movement speed when rolling will be increased by about 7%. Its minimum damage when performing a horizontal flick will go from 35 to 40. And the delay before you recover your ink after performing a horizontal flick will be reduced by about 1/20th of a second, or by 3 frames. However, the inking of spray droplets created by horizontal flicks will be increased by about 20%. So the inking per glob will be increased by 20% more, which I think is something that Roller really struggles with here. Up next is the Carbon Roller, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 12%, going from 3.96 to 3.5%. Its overall damage when performing a horizontal flick will be increased from dealing between 50 and 100 to 75 and 125. And its minimum damage at a minimum distance will be increased from 25 to 50, only for a horizontal flick. and its damage when performing a vertical flick will go from 120 to 125. And same as Splat Roller, Carbon Roller will also have an increase in the inkiness spray droplets created by horizontal flicks by about 20%, which I think would be a very strong change for Carbon Roller. Up next is the Dynamo Roller, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 5%, from 21% down to 20%, matching that of what it had in Splatoon 1. The angle in which the horizontal flick deals maximum damage will be increased or widened from 14.5 degrees to 16 degrees. The damage when performing a horizontal flick will be increased from dealing between 50 and 100 to 75 and 125. Its movement speed when rolling will be increased by about 11%, and the inkiness spray droplets created by horizontal flicks will be increased by about 10%, on top of the 15% buff the Dynamo Roller was recently given. And last up on the rollers is the Flingza Roller, where its ink consumption when performing a vertical flick will be reduced by about 8%. The delay before you recover your ink after performing a vertical flick will be reduced by 1/6 of a second, or by 10 frames. Its minimum damage when performing a horizontal flick will be increased from 30 to 35. And the inkiness spray droplets created by horizontal flicks will be increased by about 10%, while for the vertical flicks will be increased by about 15%, which I think for Flingza would be really nice for it. On to the chargers. First up is the Squiffer, where its ink consumption at full charge will be reduced by roughly 5%. Its movement speed when charging while moving will be increased by about 67%, and its maximum and minimum range at full charge will be increased by approximately 3%, and its minimum range from a partial charge will also be increased by the same amount. Up next is the Bamboo Mach 1 and Mach 2. For both weapons, its minimum damage from a partial charge will be increased from 30 to 35. Its effective range will be extended by roughly 2%, from 19.564 units to 20 units, getting its original range from Splatoon 1 back. Its movement speed will be increased by 10%. The interval between firing and being able to submerge will be reduced by 2 frames, from 15 to 13 frames. However, in exchange for all these buffs, the delay before you recover your ink will be increased by about 10 frames, or 1/6 of a second. And next up is the GooTuber, where it will get the same buffs as we gave Squiffer. Its movement speed when moving while charging will be 67% faster. Its maximum range and minimum range will be 3% longer. However, its minimum range from a partial charge will go from 40 to 45, and the time it takes to fully charge the weapon will be reduced by approximately 1/12 of a second, from 71 frames to 66. And last up is the Pencil, or Snipe Rider 5H, where its shot distance at full charge will be reduced by approximately 10%. However, its shot distance from a partial charge will be extended by approximately 3%. On top of that, the delay before you recover your ink will be increased by 10 frames. It will deal 5% more damage to Crab Tank, and will deal 10% less damage to Splash Wall. On to the blasters. First up is the regular blaster, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 10%, so it will get one more shot before having to refill its ink tank. Its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by 20%, going from 10 degrees down to 8. The chance the shots have to deviate towards the outer reticle while jumping will be reduced from 50% to 40%, and its movement speed will be increased by about 22%, and the delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 7/60ths of a second, or by 7 frames, which I think would be nice for Blaster. Up next is the Range Blaster, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 9%, going back to its original 10 shots before the nerfs it got in Splatoon 2. Its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by about 25%, going from 8 degrees down to 6. We could also make it to where Intensify Action will activate better in smaller quantities, so it will reduce the gear dependency that Range Blaster struggles with. The chance the shots have to deviate towards the outer reticle while jumping will be reduced from 50% to 40%. The delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 15/60ths of a second, or by 15 frames, going from 70 down to 55. And its damaging explosion radius, or its blast radius, will be increased by about 4%, going from 3.37 units to 3.5 units. However, with this change, the radius that deals 70 damage will go from 1.01 units to 1.05 units, which I think would be very nice for it. Up next is the Luna Blaster, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 20%. Its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by 33%. The delay before you recover your ink will be shortened by 1/6 of a second, or by 10 frames. The chance the shots have to deviate while jumping will be reduced from 50% to 40%, and its movement speed will be increased by about 10%, which I think for Luna Blaster would be very cool for it. Up next is the Rapid Blaster, where its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by about 25%, going from 8 degrees to 6 degrees. However, the time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be reduced from 40 to 70 frames to 0 to 60. The chance the bullets have to deviate while jumping will be reduced from 50% to 40%. Its movement speed will be increased by about 9%. And Rapid Blaster will no longer be a middleweight, as it will now become a lightweight weapon, matching that of Luna Blaster. Up next is the Rapid Blaster Pro, where it will get the same buffs that we gave Rapid Blaster, 25% less jump RNG. The time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be reduced from taking between 40 to 70 frames to 0 to 60. The chance the bullets have to deviate while jumping will be reduced from 50% to 40%, and its movement speed will be increased by about 10%. And the delay before you recover your ink will be the same as what we gave Range Blaster, being 15/60ths of a second, or 15 frames, which I think for Rapid Pro would be very huge. Next up is Clash Blaster, where its ink consumption will be increased by about 25%. Its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by 25%. The chance the shots have to start recovering after jumping will be reduced by 1/4 of a second, going from 40 frames to 25. The chance the shots have to deviate while jumping will go from 50% to 40%. And its blast radius will be reduced by roughly 4%, going from 4.17 to just 4, matching that of Luna Blaster. And last up on the blasters is the S-Blast, where its ink consumption will be increased by roughly 5%. The chance the shots have to deviate while jumping will go from 50% to 40%. Its continuous fire interval, or its fire rate, will be increased by 3 frames, going from 55 to 58. Its damaging explosion radius while jumping will be reduced by roughly 6%, going from 3.72 to 3.5 units, and the delay before you recover your ink will be extended by 1/12 of a second, or by 5 frames, making sure S-Blast is balanced or maintained in control. On to the Splatlings. First up is the Mini Splatling, where its shot variance on the ground will be reduced by roughly 25%, same when it's jumping. The time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be reduced from taking 25 to 70 frames to 0 to 45 frames. Its droplet rate will be increased from 1.6 to 1.8. The radius of firing droplets will be increased from 2.16 units to 2.2 units. And its movement speed while charging will be increased by about 6%, which I think for Mini Splatling would be very huge. Next up is Heavy Splatling, where its shot variance on the ground will be reduced by roughly 9%. The time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be reduced from taking 25 to 70 frames down to 0 to 45 frames. Its damage will be increased from 30 to 32. The radius of standard ink droplets will be increased by about 7%, going from 1.623 units to 1.75 units. And its movement speed while charging will be increased by about 6% for Heavy, which I think would be nice. Next up is the Hydra Splatling. So the time it takes for the bullets to recover after jumping will be reduced from taking between 25 to 70 frames to 0 to 45 frames. The radius of standard ink droplets will be increased from 1.288 units to 1.5 units. Its movement speed while charging will be increased by about 9%, and its movement speed while firing will be increased by roughly 3%. And it will also deal 10% less damage to Splash Wall. Next up is the Nautilus, as its shot variance on the ground will be reduced by roughly 9%. Its movement speed while charging will be increased by about 50%, and its movement speed while firing will be increased by roughly 14%. The radius of firing droplets will go from 1.68 units to 1.75 units and will deal 10% less damage to Splash Wall. Next up is the Ballpoint Splatling, where its long-range mode damage will be increased from 30 to 32. The effects of run speed up will be increased from 25 to 35%. And its shot variance on the ground in long-range mode will be reduced from 1.5 degrees to 1 degree. Its shot velocity in long-range mode will be increased by roughly 15% without changing the flight distance. And the chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle while on the ground in long-range mode will be reduced from 40% to 30%, matching that of other Splatlings such as Mini and Heavy, which I think for Ballpoint would be very good for it. And last up on the Splatlings is the Heavy Edit Splatling, where its damage will be increased from 26 to 28. Its shot variance will be reduced by roughly 17% when on the ground, same when it's jumping. The time it takes to fully charge the weapon will be reduced by about 10 frames, from 120 to 110 frames, and its movement speed while charging will be the same as Mini Splatlings, being increased by about 6%. On to the Sloshers. First up is the regular Slosher, where its movement speed will be increased by approximately 25%, going back to what it had in Splatoon 1. The interval between firing and being able to submerge or use your sub was reduced by 2 frames, going from 16 frames to 14. And its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 8%, going back to having 14 sloshes instead of 13. Next up is the Tri-Slosher, where its effective range while jumping will be extended by roughly 3%. Its movement speed will be increased by roughly 6%, going from 0.066 units to 0.07 units. However, the interval between continuous swings will be extended by roughly 2 frames, from 23 to 25 frames, and Tri-Slosher will go back to being a middleweight with Slosher and Sloshing Machine. Speaking of Sloshing Machine, its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 24%. The radius of ink coverage when the center of the shot hits the ground will be increased by approximately 10%. Its movement speed will be increased by roughly 14%, and the interval between continuous swings will be reduced by about 3 frames, going from 38 frames to 35, which I think for Machine would be very helpful for it. Next up is the Explosher, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 10%, its splash damage will go from 35 to 40, the delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by about 10 frames, or 1/6 of a second, and the speed of the projectiles while on the ground will be increased by roughly 5% without changing the distance of the projectiles, which I think would be very nice for Explosher. And last up is the Dreadringer, where it's only going to get 2 changes, where the interval between firing and being able to submerge will be reduced by only 1 frame, and its movement speed while firing will be increased by 10%. So I think for Dreadringer, it'll be fine from there. I don't think it needs that many changes anyway. On to the brushes. First up is Ink Brush, where its ink recovery delay before you recover your ink, or the delay before you recover your ink will be increased by about 10 frames after you swing the brush. Its ink consumption when holding ZR to paint while moving forward will be increased by roughly 4%. Also, we're also going to add a critical damage mechanic where the weapon hits an opponent with more than 1 glob of ink. Basically, its damage overlap will come back, and the minimum damage per glob will be increased from 7.5 to 9. Next up is the Octobrush, where its movement speed when swinging the brush will be increased by roughly 17%. Its movement speed when sliding will be increased by about 10%. We're also going to add the same buff we gave Ink Brush. Added a critical damage mechanic where the weapon can splat its opponent in less than 3 hits. Basically, its damage overlap, making the brush more consistent. And the width of the ink trail while sliding will be increased by approximately 11%. And yeah, I think Octobrush will be fine from there. Last up is the Paintbrush, where its ink consumption when sliding will be reduced by approximately 7%. Its movement speed while swinging the brush will be increased by about 17%. However, the delay before you recover your ink after swinging the brush and after sliding will be increased by 10 frames, which I think for Paintbrush would be fair trade-offs for some of these buffs. On to the dualies. First up are the Splat dualies, where its ink consumption will be increased by roughly 11%, going from 0.72 to 0.8%. Its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by about 7%. The chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle when not firing will be increased from 0.5% to 1%, so you're going to be able to recover your accuracy faster. The speed of the shots will be increased by roughly 10% without changing the flight distance, and the delay before you recover your ink after rolling will be decreased by 10 frames, which I think would be nice for dualies, given that's one of the things they struggle with. Next up are the dually squelchers. Now, for the dually squelchers, I'm going to try to match the original specifications that the dual squelcher had in Splatoon 1 for some of these changes. So first, its ink consumption when rolling will be reduced by roughly 25%. Its overall damage will go from 28 to 30. Its shot variance while on the ground will be reduced by 25%. The radius of ink droplets far from the player will go from 1.77 units to 1.85 units. The speed of the shots will be increased by approximately 15%, and its effective range will be extended by about 9%, which I think for dually squelchers would be really huge for it. Next up are the Dapple dualies, where its ink consumption will be increased by about 3%, its shot variance after rolling will be reduced by about 10%, and its shot variance while on the ground will be reduced by roughly 12%. And the minimum chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle will be reduced from 5% to 4%, matching that of Tetra dualies. And the radius of standard ink droplets will be increased from 1.5525 units to 1.6 units in exchange for the paint nerf, or in exchange for the ink consumption nerf. Next up are the Gluga dualies, where its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 25% after rolling. The delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 10 frames. Its shot variance after rolling will be reduced by roughly 33%. The speed of the shots will be increased by approximately 9% without changing the flight distance. and the chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle per shot will be reduced from 3% to 2%. Next up are the tetradualies, where its shot variance while on the ground will be reduced by approximately 32%, and its shot variance while jumping will be reduced by about 14%. Its damage will be increased from 28 to 30. The chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle per shot will be reduced from 4% to 2%, which I think would be a very strong change for Tetras. And the delay before you recover your ink after rolling will be reduced by about 10 frames, and its shot variance after rolling will be reduced by roughly 26%, which I think Tetras would really want, since it's always moving. And last up are the Dowser Dualies, where its ink consumption when rolling will be reduced by 20%. The minimum chance the bullets have to deviate towards the outer reticle will be reduced from 10% to 4%. Its shot variance after rolling will be reduced by roughly 13%. The delay before you recover your ink after rolling will be reduced by 1/6 of a second, or 10 frames, and the radius of the ink splatter at the point of impact will be increased by approximately 8%, which I think for Dowsers is really something it needs, given that its paint is just lacking, and this would really help it out. And onto the Brellas. First up is the Splat Brella and Sorella Brella, where its maximum damage will be increased from 81 to 85. With this change, its pellet damage will go from 16.2 to 17. Its minimum damage per droplet will go from 10.8 to 11.5. The damage dealt to the canopy by charger-type weapons will be reduced by roughly 15%. The movement speed of the weapon when shielding will be increased by about 9%, and its contact damage dealt by the canopy will be increased from 30 to 35. Next up is Tentabrella, where its minimum damage will go from 17 to 18. Its ink consumption will be reduced by roughly 10%, matching that of Range Blaster. Its canopy HP will be increased or strengthened by roughly 7%, going from 700 to 750. The movement speed when shielding will be increased by about 12%. The time it takes to regenerate your canopy after it's destroyed will be reduced from 5.67 seconds to 5.5 seconds, and the delay before you recover your ink after firing will be reduced by 10 frames. And last up is the Undercover Brella, where its maximum damage will be increased from 40 to 45, and its minimum damage will be reduced from 9 to 10.5, increased, and its pellet damage will go from 12 to 13. The amount of time it takes to regenerate your canopy will be reduced from 3.7 seconds to 3.5 seconds, and its canopy HP will be strengthened by roughly 25%, going from 200 to 250, and its contact damage dealt by the canopy will be increased from 15 to 20. Onto the Splatonis. First up is Wiper, where the width of paint droplets created by horizontal slashes will be increased by roughly 9%, and the delay before you recover your ink after performing a horizontal or charge slash will be increased by about 1/12 of a second, or by 5 frames. And last up is the Splatonis Stamper, where its ink consumption will be reduced by approximately 10%, and the width of paint droplets created by horizontal slashes will be increased by roughly 13%. Now, onto the sub-weapons. First up is Splat Bomb, where the delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 5 frames. The blast radius that deals 30 damage will be increased by about 14%, and the radius that deals maximum damage will be increased by approximately 11%. Up next is Burst Bomb. It'll have the same buff we gave Splat Bomb, 5 frames less whiting. The blast radius that deals 35 damage will be increased by 14%. Its ink consumption will go from 45 to 40%, and the effects of Ink Saver Sub will be increased from 28.888889% to 30%. Next up is Suction Bomb, having 5 frames less whiting. The blast radius that deals 30 damage will be increased by about 12%, and the radius that deals maximum damage will be increased by approximately 8%. Next up is Curling Bomb, where its cooldown before refilling your ink tank, or the delay before you recover your ink, will be reduced by 1/6 of a second after releasing the R button. And the radius that deals maximum damage, depending on how long the R button was pressed, will be increased by 9 to 25%, from between 1.6 to 4.6 units to 2 to 5 units. And its ink consumption will be reduced from 65 to 60%. Next up is Auto Bomb, where the delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 10 frames. Its enemy detection radius will be 8% larger. The blast radius that deals 30 damage will be increased by 8%, and its maximum damage will be increased by 23%. Next up is Fizzy Bomb, where the cooldown before you recover your ink will be reduced by 1/6 of a second, going from 85 frames to 75. The radius that deals 50 damage from the first explosion will be increased by 25%. The radius from the second explosion will be increased by 30%, and the radius from the third explosion will be increased by roughly 15%. So for all the bombs that I've listed off, this is in exchange for last-ditch effort being weaker. Next up is Splash Wall, where the delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 1/6 of a second, or 10 frames. Its base duration will be extended by approximately 1/3 of a second. The time it takes for the sub to set up after landing on an upward slope will be decreased by 10 frames, which I think would be nice. And the damage rate in which the damage is inflicted from touching the sub will be adjusted from 30 frames to 15 frames, and its overall damage will go from 30 to 40. Next up is Sprinkler, where the delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 5 frames. Its HP will be increased from 120 to 140 by approximately 17%. Its high power duration will be extended by 4 seconds, lasting from 8 to 12 seconds. Its ink consumption will be reduced from 60 to 50%, and its damage will be increased from 20 to 25. However, its damage range and ink radius when the sub is in its high power phase will be increased. Next up is Ink Mine, where the blast radius that deals 45 damage will be increased by approximately 11%. The damage from an inside explosion will go from 45 to 50, and the damage from an outside explosion will go from 35 to 40. The radius that triggers the sub from enemy ink will be extended from 1 unit to 1.5 units, and its ink consumption will go from 60 to 50%. Next up is Squid Beacon, where its HP will be strengthened by approximately 17% from 120 to 140. The sub will be adjusted to where you can super jump to him 3 times if you don't have them equipped, and its ink consumption will be reduced from 75 to 70%. However, in exchange, the effects of Ink Saver sub will be reduced or decreased from 40% to 35%, and the delay before you recover your ink will be increased by half a second, which I think would be a fair trade-off for beacons. And last up is Point Sensor, where its tracking time has been increased by 1/12 by half a second, going from 8 seconds to 8.5 seconds. The delay before you recover your ink will be reduced by 5 frames, and its initial speed when unequipped with sub power-up will be increased by approximately 3% and extended its throwing distance, which I think would be nice for Point Sensor. On to the specials. First up is Trizooka, where the base duration of the special will be increased by 1 second. The blast radius that deals 53 damage will go from 2.5 units to 4 units. The damage dealt by the explosions will be increased from 53 to 55. The damage to Big Bubbler will be increased by 35%. However, its startup time will be increased by 1/12 of a second. Currently, it's at 20 frames and will go up to 25. And the hitbox size for collisions with players will be slightly increased from 0.75 units to 0.8 units. Next up is Inkjet, where its base duration will be increased by half a second, from 7.5 to 8 seconds. The explosion radius that deals 50 damage will be increased by roughly 8%, from 2.55 units to 2.75 units. No changes to the radius that deals 30 damage, though. And the damage dealt to Big Bubbler by direct shots and explosions will be increased by 35%, similar to the buff we just gave Trizooka. Its direct hit damage will go from 120 to 150, and the hitbox for collisions with players will be increased from 0.3 to 0.4 units, which I think would be a huge change for Inkjet. Next up is Triple Ink Strike, or Tri-Strike as it's called, where its base duration will be increased by half a second, from 6 seconds to 6.5. The special will be adjusted to where you can submerge in your ink when in use. However, its damage radius will be reduced by roughly 3%, and the damage inflicted will be reduced by roughly 7%, from 37.5 to 35, and the damage radius will go from 7.7 units to 7.5. However, the paint radius will be increased by roughly 4%, going from 7 units to 7.25 units. And there's also a change here now that the special is able to submerge in your ink. You're able to submerge in your ink with the special. However, you'll have the same swim speed penalty as if you're using Trizooka. Next up is Tacticooler, where the drink's effect will be increased by 1 second, from 17 to 18 seconds. Its cooldown will be shortened by half a second, down to 9.5 seconds. The horizontal radius where players can grab a beverage will be increased by roughly 21%, from 7 units to 8.5 units. And the special will be adjusted to where the stand will disappear after 3 seconds when all drinks have been taken to reduce visual clutter. However, with this change, the cooldown will still be in effect, regardless if the cooler is present or not. Up next is Super Chump, where its cooldown will be reduced by 1 second, from 10.5 to 9.5 seconds. The time it takes for the chumps to fall and explode will be reduced by half a second. The blast radius that deals 70 damage will be increased by approximately 11%, from 3.6 to 4 units. The HP of each chump will be strengthened by approximately 33%, from 60 to 80, and the number of chumps launched will be increased from 12 to 15. Next up are the tent missiles, where the radius that deals 30 damage will be increased by about 6%, the radius that deals 50 damage will be increased by about 20%, and the radius that deals maximum damage will be increased by approximately 36%. And its cooldown time will be reduced by 1 second, which I think for tent missiles, they'll be fine from there. Next up is the Kraken Royale, where the time it takes to finish charging up a charge attack will be reduced by 3/60ths of a second from 35 frames to 32. The radius that deals 60 damage when performing a jump attack will be increased by roughly 13%, going from 2.65 units to 3 units. The special is now adjusted to where you can now super jump to your allies. At startup time will be 10 frames faster. Swim speed up will now affect the special besides special power up. And the width of the ink trail that Kraken leaves when you're just moving as normal will be widened by roughly 46% from 1.2 units to 1.75 units. Next up is Ultra Stamp, where its base duration will be increased by half a second from 7.5 to 8 seconds. The radius that deals 40 damage when in rush mode will be reduced by about 12% from 4 units to 3.5 units. And the activation sound effect will be adjusted to where the special is more audible to its opponents, making it easier to take evasive action, especially if someone's going to throw the special. And the damage dealt to Big Bubbler when throwing the special will be increased by 2 times. So yeah, Ultra Stamp will now be more threatening towards Big Bubbler besides Trizooka and Inkjet. Next up is Zipcaster, where the radius of the area of the explosion at the landing point that deals 35 damage will be increased by about 17%, going from 6 units to 7 units. The damage on contact with opponents will be increased from 60 to 70, and its ink consumption when using the main weapon, while the special is active, will be reduced by about 33%, which is still something that Zipcaster players still struggle with, especially if you're using Stamper. Next up is Wavebreaker, where its durability has been increased by about 4%, going from 480 to 500 HP. The depth of the waves have been increased by about 15%, going from 5.2 units to 6 units, and the height of the waves have been increased by about 16%, going from 2.8 to 3.25 units, and the damage dealt by the device will be increased from 30 to 35. Next up is Crab Tank, where its damage in rapid fire mode will be reduced from 32 to 30. The width of the ink trail left in ball form will be increased by approximately 10%. The hitbox size for collisions with players in rapid fire mode will be slightly increased from 0.2 to 0.25 units, and the hitbox for collisions with players in cannon fire will be increased from 0.4 units to 0.5 units. Next up is Triple Splashdown, where the HP of both fists will be strengthened by roughly 50%, going from 100 to 150. The radius inked by the explosion after you super jump will be increased by approximately 35%. However, the damage radius after you super jump will be increased by approximately 20%. And the hitbox for the player and the fist have been adjusted to where the inside blast radius that deals 60 damage will go from 10.5 units to 8 units, and the outside blast radius that deals 55 damage will be at 3 units. However, its inside blast radius damage will be increased from 60 to 70 to compensate for this. And last up is Inkstorm, where the frequency in which the special paints the ground will be increased by roughly 12%, the paint radius of drops will be increased by roughly 4%, the damage dealt to Crab Tank will be increased by approximately 67%, and the damage dealt to Big Bubbler will be increased by about 2 times, which I think for Inkstorm is very substantial for it, especially with the buff that it was given back in 6.1, making it that you are able to heal faster underneath it. And now, on to some ability changes. First up is Special Power-Up. For Trizooka, Special Power-Up will now increase the painting radius of the explosions by up to 30%. In addition, the damage radius of the explosions will be increased by up to 35%. Keep in mind this is only if the changes for Trizooka do not go into effect. If they don't, this is the insurance policy. If they do, this becomes irrelevant. For Tacticooler, Special Power-Up now increases the maximum duration time for the drink's effect to 26 seconds instead of 25. For Tentamissiles, the Special Power-Up will increase the painting radius of the missiles by up to 25%. And for Crab Tank, Special Power-Up will be nerfed to where it will now increase the duration time up to 10 seconds instead of 11. And last up is Comeback, where the amount of the ability that is given while Comeback is active will be increased from 10 to 12 ability points, going right back to what I had in Splatoon 1. And now for our points for special changes. Forge Pro will get Booyah Bomb at 190p, 52 Gal Deco will get Screen at 200, 96 Gal will get Ink Vac at 200, 96 Deco will get Kraken at 200, H3 will get Tacticooler at 180, H3D will get Big Bubbler at 190, Squeezer will get Trizuka at 210. Foil Squeezer will get Screen at 200. Neo Sploosh will get Killer Whale at 180p. Aerospray will get Reef Slider at 200p. We have another plus 20 points for special here. Aerospray RG will get Booyah Bomb at 200. Colors Aerospray will get Screen at 190. Splattershot Nova will get Whale at 200. And the Ananki Splattershot Nova will get Inkjet at 200. Carbon Roller Deku will get Trizuka at 180. Stars Dynamo will get Killer Whale at 190. Flingza Roller will get Tent Missiles at 200. And Foil Flingza will get Screen at 210. Classic Squiffer will get Big Bubbler at 180. Goo Tuber will get Tent Missiles at 190. Snipe Rider 5B will get Inkstorm at 200. Both Range Blaster and CRB will get Wavebreaker and Kraken at 200. Rapid Blaster Deku will get Inkjet at 200. Rapid Pro Deku will get Killer Whale at 180. Rapid Pro Winter will get Tacticooler at 190. Ballpoint will get Inkjet at 200. Tri-Slosher Ashen will get Screen at 190. Neo Sloshing Machine will get Trizuka at 180. And Dreadringer will get Reef Slider at 200. Octobrush Nouveau will get Inkstorm at 190p. Splat Dualies will get Crab Tank at 200. Dapple Dualies will be our next 160 weapon in Splatoon 3, so we now have a 160 cooler weapon. Dapple Dualies Nouveau will get Reef Slider at 200. Glooga Dualies Deku will get Trizuka at 180. Light Tetra Dualies will get Zipcaster at 180. Custom Dowsers will get Tri-Strike at 190. Sorella Brella will get Inkjet at 200. Sorella Tent will get Trizuka at 190. Undercover Brella will get Reef Slider at 190. Splatana Wiper Deku will get Tent Missiles at 180. And finally, the sticker Splatana Stamper will get Booyah Bomb at 200. And for the stages to return, I think Salt Spray Rig would be a nice change here. I think the stage will undergo very few changes for Turf War, but I think for the other modes, it will undergo heavy reworks, especially for Clan Blitz being the new face in the crowd for this stage. And I think the Reef should come back as well. I've had a lot of good times on this stage back when I played Splatoon 2, and I think this should make a reappearance for Splatoon 3. And that's it. That is everything, and that's the video. If you guys like the video, be sure you subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, just send a comment below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.